Hey everybody, this is Workforce Gaming. I'm Brad, along here with Doug.
Hi.
So, this is a review like 14 years in the making. Since
2006.
way. Oh, it's only 10 years. Never mind. That's not
Yeah.
impressive at all. But anyway, The Last Guardian is out and is
hmm
here finally. And Doug was a huge fan of Ico and Shadow of the Colossus
Yep.
and has been patiently waiting for this for like 10 years.
Kinda.
Kinda.
Yeah.
And you finally got your
Yeah.
hands on it. So does it live up to the hype of being the greatest game of all time that was worth 10 years to wait for?
Oh my. What a loaded question. Um. Yeah. Actually,
Yes.
I have like literally the first PS2 game I ever owned was Ico. That was that was actually the game that got my dad to buy a PS2 for us because he liked Tomb Raider and he thought it'd be like Tomb Raider, and it kind of is and kind of isn't. So yeah, I mean, I've been following the series like since it was on PS2 era. And this was definitely one of those mythic games, kind of like Final Fantasy Versus 13, which never actually came out. um,
Kinda.
uh, Half-Life 3, and those games that you just like never think you're gonna get. So does it live up to 10 years of like waiting? I would no. I mean, it can't. It just couldn't. Like even like I mean, if this game was released like maybe 5 years ago, yeah, probably. If this was like a PS4 launch title, yeah, maybe. But I don't know if it was totally worth it. But that's not to say it's not a great game. It is a very, very, I was surprisingly unique game. I think my original thought when we had talked about Last Guardian before was like I was worried that this game was going to be too similar to a lot of other games that have been doing what Ico and Shadow of the Colossus have been doing for years, and just
Yeah.
not be as good as those games.
Yeah.
Uh, but yeah, this is like a totally different beast. This is not Journey. This is not this is not like like a Journey or a Limbo or an Inside. People weirdly compared to Inside. It's not like
See,
those at all.
and in my mind, like looking at this,
hmm
I just think because I feel like that whole genre of indie games and that inside limbo journey, that whole kind of genre almost stems from Ico, where it's just no, we
Yeah.
can because Ico was really one of those games in my mind, and I'm sure it wasn't the first, but to me, it was always one of those first games that really put this just you can just have a game where you just kind of walk around and not a whole lot happens, but we're telling
hmm
this larger story inside of that.
Yeah.
And I think that's where you instantly get these comparisons to that game of going, oh, well, Ico was 15 years ago and was like that, and now these games are kind of in the same genre as Ico, so it would be like those
Yeah.
games.
Yeah, and so that was yeah, exactly. No, I don't think that's an incorrect way of thinking about it because that's how I had thought about it as well. But this game is a very different beast. Well, those games like are inspired by Ico. This is like literally like Ico 2. I think a lot of games like emulate certain aspects of Ico, but just that overall very quiet, very very slow burn game, is just not really reflected nowadays. Um, because even stuff like Inside has some pretty like bombastic moments. Even those walking simulators have like
Yeah, you've got
some
your big
very
set pieces still, which Ico never really
didn't. Yeah,
didn't. Yeah,
it
didn't
had a
really have. I'm trying to think. I feel like there was like one part where like a castle wall fell down or something around you or something, but
yeah. I haven't played that shit. I haven't played Ico in like a decade and a half or something like that.
yeah.
But yeah, I think Ico is probably a good starting point. But the thing that I was kind of surprised about, unique, like as far as uniqueness goes, this game is a really slow burn. Um, when I played the first 3 hours of this game, I was really worried that I would not like it. I didn't like it for the first 3 hours. I found it frustrating. I found it slow. I was like, this game is just not going to live up to whatever expectations I had for it. Um, and the thing that's really interesting is that the game and the reason one of the reasons I had with this was the controls. Like I found the controls just kind of difficult to use. Like trying to get Trico to do things is kind of frustrating at first. Um, as the game goes along and the characters get to know each other better, the game actually controls better.
I'd heard that like he
Yeah.
responds, he like the first part it just kind of ignores you, and you just kind of got to go along with his shit. Whereas like towards by the
Mhm.
time you get to the end of the game and your friends or whatever, it's like, oh no, he listens to you just like a good dog would.
Yeah, it's really weird because it feels like the first few hours of the game, it's not just those two characters trying to meet each other and like try to form a relationship. Like you're trying to form a relationship with these characters in this game because it is such a slow. No, because it's such a slow start. The controls are so different. The pacing is so different. Like it is sort of this like weird tepid relationship. Like personally, I had with the game of like I need to not because I didn't quite understand what the game was at first, even having this background of what it was. But really, like what it all burns down to, it's the story of like owning an animal, told better than anything I've ever seen before, which is really crazy because I think a lot of games use pets specifically as like a gameplay mechanic. You could argue that this one is like clearly that's the gameplay mechanic,
Yeah.
but really the core of the story is this relationship like a man has with their pet. So I think a lot of people actually I would say like really for people if you're reading reviews for this game and people say oh this game sucks the animal doesn't listen to you, it's like if you have an animal that is exactly how animals listen to people.
They don't.
Unless you, yeah, exactly. I mean, people have like really well trained dogs, and I can understand that. But it's the sort of thing that you really need to buy into. Like Trico will not listen to you all the time, and maybe it's a glitch. I mean, maybe it's just bad AI. A lot of people are like, oh, it's just bad AI, bad AI, bad AI. You play as a 12-year-old who doesn't control very well. But if you think of it as like a sloppy 12-year-old trying to lead his big dog that he's not very good at training around, and you can actually like buy into that, then everything like you have any issues I had with the game sort of just faded away. And I could see a lot of people not being able to move past that.
So
Um,
essentially, you're saying a big piece of this is engrossing yourself in the universe and understanding not just how the game controls mechanically, but understanding
mm,
from how the. I'm actually kind of curious because it almost sounds like the story impacts the controls, which I think is something that's never really been done that I can think of.
no, and the thing that's like I thought it's like incredibly like brave move of them to do something like that because like really it's like your characters aren't enjoying their time together at the beginning, and you're not really enjoying your time with these characters together. Not that they're bad characters or anything. It's just like just figuring stuff out. It's like where's the story going? I don't know the stories. It's and it is really interesting that they do that, especially with when you're fighting the controls for the first few hours of the game, and you need to get over that.
I I feel like that takes a lot of confidence in your game to be able to sit
It
here and go, we're
mm,
gonna make the first couple hours be really rough
mm,
for a purpose and not
yeah.
intentionally just to irritate people, but to go, you know what, this will have a greater payoff when you understand the arc we're trying to do in terms of the story by making this first part rough. And I think that's something that you would only be able to get from somebody who has this set
Mm-hmm.
respect in this genre, in this industry of, okay, I made these two games, you stick with them, they're great,
Mm-hmm.
stick with me for the first couple hours here and it will be awesome.
Yeah, it is yeah. And the thing is, like, I think there's some not infighting, but there's a lot of discussion. It's like, is this on purpose or not? And like to me, I don't. To me personally, it doesn't matter because I that's the way I felt about it. Like I felt
Yeah.
like that is what they were trying to do with the story, and to me it made sense, and to me it absolutely fit. One of the things I think is really interesting is that you're controlling a 12-year-old like who is kind of a clumsy 12-year-old.
Yeah.
Um, and it's really interesting too because the game has a lot of platforming. So like, oh god, clumsy controls on a platforming. But this game, like the platforming to me is more exciting than anything in Uncharted at all. Like Uncharted has these really bombastic moments, but seriously, when you are making any single jump in this game, you're holding your breath. Like,
See, no.
no, I you can disagree. I know, I know that's fine. You can disagree with me, but with Uncharted, when I was making a jump, I knew I'd always make it. Like I could jump way
Yeah.
beforehand or way after, and I didn't really have to aim it as long as the stick was in the general direction. He was going to catch it, or he was
Yeah.
going to cinematically fall off it. But in this one, like it's skill based, so like you can miss a jump, like easily.
Which,
You can miss a jump.
but that's fine. But when, I guess in my mind, when you're going like, oh yeah, this thing plays kind of clumsy, and that makes it more exciting than Uncharted because you might be jumping over a river and then you fall in the river and die, versus like,
Yeah,
oh yeah, in this game you're jumping from literally mountain to mountain. Like, I don't know. I
mm.
feel like that to me is kind of weird. But I guess
I
I
know.
mean I guess I could
Mm.
see it, but
I'm just saying in the aspect of platforming. I'm not going to argue about the rest of the pacing of Uncharted or anything like that. But I just found that I personally found the platforming Uncharted kind of boring because it felt like there was no risk. They
yeah,
they they made the appearance of there being a lot of risk, but there really wasn't. Um,
true.
because it wasn't really skill based. It was more like connect the dots. I know it's kind of like a brash way of saying it, but that's just how I felt about it. Oh yeah, but this game has a really good way of making insignificant moments seem very significant. Like like Trico making a jump in this game. While I think in other games like I played Call of Duty recently, Advanced Warfare, and Advanced Warfare, like when you describe what happens in Advanced Warfare, there's a lot of like these huge bombastic moments where you're killing tons of guys and you're doing all this stuff. But like in this game, they make every moment seem important to the point where like every time Trico made a jump, like I was like, is he gonna make it? And like even though like Uncharted, I think this is the thing with Uncharted, like he would or would not make it. For I don't know, for whatever reason in this game, I don't know how they do it, or like what it was in me that made me like really hold my breath every, even if I knew it's gonna be some sort of cinematic thing where he fell off or he just barely made it. Like still, you're, because you care about these characters, like you do feel like your heart racing every time there's a really big jump, and they do some very cool things with like swelling the music before certain jumps that you're like really not sure what could go wrong, and sometimes things do go wrong, which is really interesting because it's not just it it's the game is set in this sort of like post-apocalyptic is not the right word, but it's an abandoned castle, and having a giant beast running around an abandoned castle that's falling to pieces will continue to fall to pieces because of this giant thing running around.
Yeah.
So there's some cool things where like there's this bridge. Maybe you'll see a bridge. It's like, oh, okay, I just need to go to the bridge. But as soon as Trico jumps on it, it starts just kind of like cracking and warping a little bit just because of his weight. And something that would not seem that dangerous in other games suddenly becomes very dangerous. And I don't know. I don't know. I just felt like this game did,
What?
just because of that, making every moment seem important, every jump feel like this big accomplishment. I don't know how the game did it, but I really, really, really loved about the game. Um, I don't know. I just have like a lot of weird thoughts about this game. I haven't, because I really want to talk about it before we started doing Game of the Year stuff, because I really wasn't sure where I was going to put it, because there's a lot of issues, kind of, but it's so different than any other game I've played that I don't really know how I feel about it. Um, I loved it. It annoyed me. I hated it sometimes. It made me really sad. It made me really care about these characters. It made me miss my dog. It's such a weird mishmash of a game, to the point when I was reading reviews, like a lot of reviews came out. There's a lot of sixes, a lot of sevens, a lot of nines and tens, and I can absolutely understand every single review that's come out for this. Like, yes, this game is a 6. Yes, this game is a 10. Yes, it's a 7. Yes, it's an 8.5. Yes, it's a 9. It really just depends when you're playing the game. Like, um, the game will frustrate you. Like, there's no way you can't play this game and it'll frustrate you. But it makes sense in the context of the game for it to be a little frustrating. It makes sense in the context of the game to not control very well. Everything is justified, and like the story arc, um, is very clear. Like the arc is very clear, but the world they leave a mystery. Like they don't answer a lot of questions, and you just need to deal with that. um, Kind of like Shadow of the Colossus and Ico. I think Shadow of the Colossus had a pretty clear, story path, but this one just doesn't. Sorry, that was a lot of stuff. I don't know if any of that actually made sense.
So I guess what you're saying is this ultimately just comes down to a game of A, you're willing to put up with some annoying things that may or may not be there on purpose, and B, how you feel about the story and the connection to the characters. Because it seems like the rest of it is kind of like, there's some good, there's some bad, but if you're really willing to invest in it, like it turns out to be, like you said, almost a Game of the Year candidate.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Yeah, it does take a lot of investment, because like really those first 3 hours I didn't enjoy, and I kept reading, like it seems like it's something that people also felt, and but then people like, just stick with it. It's like, oh well, I usually hate this sort of excuse, because I stopped playing Final Fantasy 13 because of this, because Final Fantasy 13 people say it gets good 10 hours
Great
in.
game.
Like,
Great game.
yeah, but I'm not waiting. I'm not going to spend the time to get to invest that. And I don't think it's normally worth it. But this one does take like 3 or 4 hours to get into. But the game pays off very, very well. I especially like story wise and character wise, like it all very much pays off. And any sort of frustrations you had at the beginning, like they all seem justified. Like when I was all done like with the game, it felt justified. And like really, I don't know if when I'm thinking back to it, it's like, would I want the game to control better? Would I want the game to fix these things that I didn't? Maybe the technical issues, those I would probably like to fix. There are some issues with like frame rate and stuff like that, but I wouldn't change the controls. I wouldn't change the fact that Trico's sometimes frustrating to control, because when he's no longer is frustrating to control, it's really freaking satisfying, and it's really, really neat.
Well, and I'm sure it's one of those things that wouldn't have the same impact of like, oh my god, he just did that, if he's been doing that since minute 2 of the game.
Yeah, no, exactly. Like they're willing to space out those moments, and there are some very, very cool set pieces that really come in at unexpected times and unexpected ways. And I really appreciate that they sometimes like lay out red herrings. Like you really think this puzzle goes one way, and then it's like, oh nope, then it makes a hard left. You're like, oh, what the hell's going on? And it's cool because the game is generally quiet. It's a very quiet, very somber, very slow game. So when things pick up, they feel just monumental. While like games with like say Doom or Call of Duty where things just are immediately shooting and stuff. Like even like the bigger the explosions don't really make anything that much more impactful. But if you've had a game
Yeah.
with no explosions and then suddenly there's an explosion, it's like, oh shit. there's like
Yeah.
that moment. So I don't know. It's a really really great game, but there's a lot of things like you should know going into it. This is not a normal video game by any stretch of the word, like at all. Cool game though, very cool.
That sounds like a good place to wrap this up. So, this is Workforce Gaming. You can follow us on Twitter at Workforce Gaming. Subscribe to us here on YouTube. Comment, like this, do whatever else you can do with these things.
Wow.
I hate doing this. I hate doing this part. All right, see you later.
Gotta get those clicks. All right, see ya.